Hey, I wanted to ask you a question, JR, because I was thinking about this the other day. Because obviously, when you're booking, you're always trying to find stuff that, other people haven't done, or something that's so old that now it's new, right?
Yeah.
And what are some of the things from the past that we don't do anymore that you think that if we still did today, they'd get over?
Well, I can tell you that one of the things that nobody was doing, and I suggested Tony Khan there at AEW that we do, is have time limits.
Right.
Because as a booker, having a time limit gives you a viable additional finish.
Right.
And having a draw is new in wrestling again. And having a draw is accepted, a tie, a draw, whatever, is accepted in the nomenclature of sports in general. You know, so I know, hey, look, well, baseball didn't have ties. Well, I get it. But there are ties in a lot of games. And there's, soccer games, nil, 2, 1-1. So I just think that was something that we could do that was very simplistic, and then we're doing that. So that's one thing for sure. And the other thing is we don't trust our own creativity and the talent's ability to get over by letting things have a more deliberate pace, so the roots have more time to get embedded into the psyche of the customer or the viewer. And because everybody's in a hurry now. So instead of having a 6-month program or a year program, you say, well, you couldn't do that nowadays. Right. You could if it was good.
Right.
Of course you could if it was good.
Right.
So there's things like that.
Let me give you an example. Our biggest storyline last year was an undercard, like romance, right? And this thing took a whole year, and it ended up in a hair match. So you can do it. And you're right. That's one of the problems we have today. You have all these microwave, feuds, Right. You forget about them. They have no, like you said, you can't embed emotional roots into the psyche because it's over before it began.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
People have to have time to process. And we have to realize in this crazy business, no matter what our lot in life, or the wrestling life is that people have more to do than just watch wrestling. So having a longer, more defined, I can process this story, a processable piece of creativity is what you're always looking for. And I believe that fans will stay hooked nowadays. I just think they're longing for a better product. And, we were doing really well AEW wise. I felt like we're starting to get there with a whole new team in every area, every single phase of what we were doing. Everybody was working together for the first time by and large. There's a few exceptions. Raphael's one. Keith Mitchell's one. The guys I knew.
Dirty
I worked
Keith
with.
too. Yeah.
So but then this damn virus came along, man, and these empty things. I'm not going to fly for 2 weeks. Tony Khan called me last week, said, I'm worried about you getting exposed to this thing. You're in the high risk group. You can't get sick. And I appreciate that. I don't know anybody else who said that to me in that regard, but they're going to be sending me things for me to voice over here. So I'm going to stay involved to some degree, but not as much as I would like. And I'm not going to be on the road. For me to get to Jacksonville, for example, from Oklahoma City, that's 2 airplanes and 3 airports, Oklahoma City, Dallas, and Jacksonville. I'm 68 years old. So I'm stupid to get on these tubes of germs,
right,
all the time.
Right. And go ahead.
So I'm missing the work in that respect. I'm missing getting out of the house. But hell, ain't we all? Aren't we all stir crazy, for God's sakes? Poor JR. Oh my God, poor JR. So what I'm doing, I'm immersing myself in promoting my book. It comes out on Tuesday. So
Joe read it. He's got it right in front of us here.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Somehow I ordered it from Walmart, and they sent it to me last week. I got it on Friday. So
no kidding.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. One of the main differences that I see, JR, when I'm watching AEW and I watch WWE specifically is obviously the promos in AEW are more organic, and they just sound that way and they come out better. Whose idea was it, or when did it start, or when did this transition start in WWE? Because I'm assuming you were there, where they just said, okay, let's start scripting everything.
I would say, I don't think it was at the beginning of the Attitude Era, but I think somewhere subsequently to that, the writing people became more prominent. There are more of them. And so they're splitting up duties. This guy's going to write a promo for this guy. It became very compartmentalized, like we were Disney.
Right.
And Vince wants to envision himself as a Disney company. That's cool. He's making more money than anybody else, so he's doing all right. But bottom line is that the more riders they hired, the more jobs they had to find for them to do, and some of them were just writing promos and using their own personal imagination. I say that sometimes a kid that's 22 or 23 years old and one of his first jobs out of college, who's actually never been in a fight, who's never played in an athletic contest, who's never had the shit knocked out of him, is a little bit challenging to write for somebody that's a live, living being that's standing in front of you. I'd rather, what we do is the guys will get bullet points, but basically we don't have any writers. We have zero in AEW. So what you hear, good or bad, oh, that's not a good promo. That was a good promo. It's because it's a talent deal, and I think fans like that. Carlos, is just basically the same deal, man. It's back to the old days a little bit. How many promos did you do that weren't scripted? Thousands?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I've been very lucky because the way I talk, nobody can really write for me. So they've always given me like a lot of leeway. But I'm definitely like in the one. You know what I'm saying?
You should create your own material. That's what you're doing. You guys are doing here today. You're creating content, and I think that's what you ask the talents to do. Hey, look, you get paid a good buck. You're working 1 day a week. Come on, you can't think about your promo.
Right. So JR, let me get this right then. So back then, it's like they just randomly just started hiring a bunch of writers, and everybody's sitting back saying like, hey, what do we need all these writers for? And they're basically saying, well, we got all these writers that need to write. And so they just said, is that how kind of it worked? They just hired them, and so because they hired them and they needed something to do, they just started writing the promos?
It seemed like that the guys were, after Russo and Ferrara left, that's when the proliferation of the influx of writers came to be. And they all got assigned different tasks. This one's going to work on Raw. This one's going to work on SmackDown. So now once you get to your brand, what are you going to do? Well, you're not going to be the booker, even though they try to be booking. They try to come up with booking ideas. So you got to take the existing booking that's been created and then make promos for it and help these guys as best you can. So that's how that came about, Disco. It was just crazy stuff. And it made everybody feel like we were a big entertainment company. And it's trying to leave the wrestling company aspect farther and farther behind. And I thought that was a mistake because you can't leave your core product, man. You can't.
Well, let me tell you what I feel like I get. And tell me if you get this feeling too. And it's because they put, like you described the typical writer, 22, 23-year-old kid, first job, he's never been in a fight, hasn't slept with a lot of girls and stuff. But what I always got out of this when they started scripting the promos, because most of the writers and like half the guys in the business these days are huge comic book marks. The conversations that the wrestlers were having were conversations that you'd read like the comic book characters having. Like comic book characters are not real people; they're comic book characters. So it's like I always got that vibe. I was like, boy, I bet you all these guys are comic book marks. This is what the show sounds like. Did you get that feeling?
Sometimes, sometimes. I feel bad for the talent more than anything. Yeah. I don't get angry at the writers for trying to do their job. They got hired to do something they weren't qualified to do sometimes. We've all been there, I guess, in our lifetimes. But I felt bad for the talents. I see the gleam in the talent's eye when they get a promo on AEW because they can create something. They can have a hand in their future. They can have a hand in the building their persona. At any time, anybody, every smart booker I ever worked for, including and starting with Cowboy Bill Watts, when he hired talent, he always wanted to make sure when he hired top talent that they knew they were coming in and they were going to help book their program. Because anytime a guy's got some of his own skin in the game, he's going to work hard to make it work. Plus, they tell you what they can do. They know what they do best. And so to me, it was just a natural progression of how Watts did it. And now we're doing it. Tony Khan's been very influenced by Bill Watts and other NWA and old school wrestling. So now we're kind of back in that world.
Bro, and it's kind of funny, Jim, because I kind of work that way also. I find out who are my good talkers. I don't got to write nothing for them, okay?
Right.
These guys don't talk that well. I got to help them talk. These guys are real smart. Give me an idea that you want to do. So now they feel like something isn't being forced upon them and they're more open to everything because it's their idea. But one of the problems that we have is that, and you've seen this, Jim, is a lot of bookers. They're afraid that if the idea isn't theirs, and somebody else is going to get a credit, and they're afraid for their job. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So they don't want any ideas to come through if it isn't theirs, or they'll steal it.
Rampant insecurity and paranoia has been in my psyche since 1974 when I first walked into a pro wrestling locker room. Who's that guy? Who's the new kid? What's that?
Right.
That's the other referee. Is he
Right.
taking your spot?
Right.
Paranoia, and
Or how about this one, Jim? When you go backstage to visit your friends, he's probably here trying to get a job. No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
People. Yeah.
Let me tell you something, because I've worked another job since I've been out of wrestling, right? And I always used to say that there's two people in the business: the ones that want to do their job and the ones that want to keep their job.